Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And a very warm welcome to all of you to Living Islam on Hidayat TV, broadcast to over 160 countries worldwide, coming to you from our Birmingham studios. My name is Nasreen Qasmi, and I pray that you've all had a very productive and spiritually enlightening Shahr Ramadan, and you've enjoyed our program throughout the month. And I also hope that you had a very beautiful Eid, inshallah. Now, today's show, we're hoping to focus on maintaining that Shahr Ramadan spirit and how we can take everything that we've learnt during the month across and into the remaining 11 months of the year. Because, of course, if we think of Shahr Ramadan as an annual training program, we hope that we have developed and progressed and that we can make the most of the other 11 months and show Allah that we truly have changed ourselves and we've learnt from this beautiful month. So inshallah, that's going to be the focus of today's show, and I'm here with, of course, Ayman Hirji. Assalamu alaikum, Ayman. Now, this topic is one that's very important for us to sort of have a follow-up topic after this epic month that we've had, full of enlightening experiences and the bounty of Allah and the blessings that we've had upon us. And I think one of the ways that we can stay connected is to have targets. Now, I find that, and I've spoken to quite a lot of people about this, and including myself, these are some of my own feelings, is that often when we've had an encounter, a very spiritual encounter, whether we go for Hajj or for Ziyarat or anything like this, because we've had a spiritual high, it's followed by a low. And sometimes people experience this post-Shahr Ramadan blues or post-Ziyarat blues. And so we need to be able to keep this spirit alive and maintain it. So that's what I want to talk about in a bit more detail and length. So would you like to just talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we can keep this going? I know that's a long question, but...
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And hope you had a blessed Eid, inshallah. You're right in that this kind of feeling, I think, doesn't affect only a few of us. I think most of us go through this. Some of us just jump back into our normal routines without realizing that we've actually just gone back to the rat race of life, while others, it takes some time to sort of ease into the routine. But I know every one of us does feel the absence and does miss excess time we had and the leisure we had in Shahr Ramadan. And the feeling that was the blessings and it's a completely different feeling. And each one of us feels that when Shahr Ramadan leaves. Even like you said on previous shows, that it's a bittersweet, bittersweet event when Eid comes around. But it's very easy to fall into a sort of a decline, to come down to a level where you feel sad that you're unable to keep up the supplications, the prayers, if you've started up any new deeds or anything. And you tend to feel, personally I do feel like that myself, the feeling after ziyarah when you feel like you've been somewhere very spiritual, very enlightening, and you've come away now and you feel like you're too far away to reach the blessings. But in reality, like we were discussing earlier, we have the opportunity, and that's what counts and that's what matters.
So you think to some degree, of course, this is psychological, that we've ourselves limited ourselves by thinking that I can only reach those heights of spirituality in this month of Shahr Ramadan. But actually, we can strive for that at any time and at any place.
I think there's two ways of looking at that. There's on one level, you can say that it is psychological, but on another level, we can say that it's the blessing of Shahr Ramadan and the increased mercy and love that Allah shows us in the month.
Because there is something in the atmosphere and that you feel it's different.
That makes us feel so ready and prepared to turn towards Allah. So really, we've had the greatest of blessings and the greatest of honors by being the guests of Allah. But as we mentioned a long time ago, before Shahr Ramadan started, was that we're eternally going to be the guests of Allah. And the mercy of Allah is unbounded, it's limitless, it's infinite, and it's something that we, like you said, we create those boundaries and those limits for ourselves. So Allah gives us a glimpse of this beauty and this mercy and love and kindness, and how He never has less by giving us. And He teaches us these lessons in Shahr Ramadan. And for us to be able to take that away is a huge task, because once Shahr Ramadan finishes, again we're back to our material ways of living, and we've suddenly started cooking food 3 times a day, having meals. It just sort of, we don't realize, but it just continues without us realizing that we're going back into the same sort of routine. However, there are the strong will amongst us who keep this up and who keep the momentum of Shahr Ramadan going. But then again, I think, may Allah help all of us in this, but there is a point where you feel, okay, I've done too much now you slowly, you know, some people decline straight away, some people after a few months or a couple of months. However, we can all keep up this momentum, because that's the whole point, like you were mentioning earlier. The whole point of Shahr Ramadan was for us to acquire that taqwa, not only for Shahr Ramadan, but for us to take us beyond Shahr Ramadan, and to keep that alive until the next month of the month of Ramadan that approaches us, inshallah. And Allah allows us to see that and have that opportunity again, inshallah. And there's so many different things, like we were discussing previously, that we can do to keep this going. But first of all, it is very necessary to reevaluate ourselves and take a step back and say, you know, okay, we're feeling like this, but where do we go from here? So it's easy, for example, for myself to slip into a situation where I say, no, I feel terrible, I feel down, I feel gloomy, and I don't see anything beyond that. But if I pick myself up and say, okay, now where do I go from here now? That's gone now. I need to move, look forward and live in the present and make the most of now. So yeah, it's very important to focus on the main things that you did encourage yourself to do and create the habits that you created in the days and nights of Ramadan, so that you can take these forward with you, even if it's just one habit. So there isn't that increased pressure on you to take everything forward, because it's quite a huge task, like I was saying.
And the fact that in this month everybody did increase in their worship and this and the deeds and so forth that they did, it shows what we're capable of.
Definitely.
When we put our hearts into it. And like you said, we don't have to maintain everything and do all of this. I know a lot of people took time off during Shahr Ramadan as well, and now they've gone back to work, and it'll be more difficult for them to do. But as long as they take a few things and work with them and do them regularly. And so one of the ideas that we didn't come up with the idea, I'm sure it's been out there, but one of the ideas we've talked about is having Shahr Ramadan beyond Shahr Ramadan targets and having goals for yourself. And some of them are on, we've got a little presentation that we can show, inshallah, in just a moment, and then you can see some of the things that you can list for yourself and try to keep to them. So it's things like giving daily charity, even if it doesn't have to be a huge amount. You can have a little charity box next to you, and even if you put in £1 a day, 50p a day, 20p, whatever you can afford on that day. But it's the fact that you're getting into the habit of doing this regularly, keeping up with certain prayers that you prayed during Shahr Ramadan, maybe the night prayer.
It's very important in all of this. Yeah, you're right in that there's so many elements and so many aspects to what we did of worship that we incorporated into our lifestyles in Shahr Ramadan, and each one of us had that unique and individualized to ourselves. So every one of us had their own timetable of how we were doing things, and that was the amazing spirit of Shahr Ramadan, you know, that we created this time for ourselves, and we created time for Allah and our interaction with Allah, and we also created time for sitting down and having iftar with our friends and family, and we managed to create time to go to work and do all the rest, and you know, go to the masjids and interact with the community at large. So we had all these different aspects to our Shahr Ramadan, and then we need to take, each one of us needs to sit and say, okay, this is what I did. So for example, if I started Salatul Layl, for example, inshallah, and I want to keep this up, so the first thing I need to make is an intention to keep that up, purify my intention to the best I can, and say to Allah that, Allah, help me keep this goal up, because this is the means with which I want to come close to you. And then obviously the practical steps, for example, would be to, we were saying earlier, depending on what kind of an individual you are, your personality, your day, your schedule, maybe sleep early so that you have enough sleep to be able to wake up early enough for Salatul Layl, just before Fajr, or stay awake, whichever works for you. You know, catch a nap in the evening and then stay awake until it's Fajr time, and then spend enough time for Salatul Layl. So we can do any of these things, and then when we wake up for Salatul Layl, then if you are into the habit, when you get into something, then do it to the best. So waking up and you know, putting on the clean clothes and perfuming yourself, and then preparing yourself to stand in front of Allah. So taking all these things on board and just sticking with it, and then making sure that every day you try and wake up at the same time. It's just one thing, but one thing that we do sincerely, there's the hadith of Rasulullah, that one thing that a believer does sincerely for the sake of Allah, then Allah increases his faith and makes the springs of wisdom come forth from his tongue and his heart. So anything done exclusively for 40 days, which is the significance of 40, is something that becomes a habit, that becomes, it becomes a part of your life. It becomes something that you can't separate from. And even if you do, even for a day, you sort of miss it. You feel its absence in your life, and you feel like there's something you haven't completed. There's something that's pending. And so it's important that you take one thing at a time. So for another person, it could be another target, for example, reciting Quran. We did a lot of Quran recitation in Shahr Ramadan. So making sure, for example, on the recommendation of our Imams, 6th Imam and Imam Ali alayhi salam, to recite 50 verses a day.
Right.
So that's the recommendation. Now, if you're starting easy, then start with 10, and just make sure at a certain time in the day, maybe after Fajr, that you're reciting these 10 verses regularly. So you recite these verses as you go along.
I think we've got the clip now that we were talking about, so you can use this as a sort of rough template for yourselves, and then make a list of all the things that you could possibly do to improve your days, and whether it's things like incorporating reading the Quran more often, doing tasbih, or here's some of them. Says learn more about my religion, so you can listen to a lecture, you can read books, you can recite du'as, give daily charity, which we just spoke about, start understanding tafsir, Quran tafsir as well.
Definitely. And then there's rituals of Friday: avoid fighting, backbiting, lying, forgiving others, concealing others' shortcomings. Each one of these was things that we did in our lifestyle.
And they're not small things, but you shouldn't take these things lightly, because in the sight of Allah they are grand, they are amazing, and the amount of reward there is in giving up things like that.
And there's even more ideas there, lowering your gaze, doing miswak, taking some more time for wudu, memorizing part of the Quran, beginning things from the right side, eating according to the Sunnah, fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, learning about Rasulullah and his family.
And we're given this beautiful month as well, Shawwal, where there are 6 recommended fasts, that if you fast in this month, it will be as though you fasted the entire year. So again, Allah's not saying, all right, you've had this amazing month of Shahr Ramadan and now go back to nothing. He's giving us these opportunities to maintain and keep it up. And that's the reason, I mean, we compare it to like when we're studying for exams, and we've spent 3 years at university, whatever, and then suddenly after your exams are finished, your university degrees finished, everything, and there's nothing, you go back to nothing, and it feels empty. And what this is saying, Allah is saying that don't just go from having this amazing month to nothing. Don't give up these things. That's what makes us feel nothing and empty, isn't it? When we give up reading the Quran, which was part of our daily life for 30 days, or give up the prayers, or give up the tasbih, that's what makes us feel empty. So as long as we maintain it, that feeling shouldn't really subside.
You're right, and that is what creeps in, is because we have had this huge influx of all these extras that we've been doing. There's a huge influx, and now suddenly, honestly speaking, there seems to be no time. And even if there is time, I'm using it in different ways.
This is so true.
So again, I've rescheduled my timing, whereas I didn't stick to the way I wanted it to be. Whatever I wanted ideally happened in Shahr Ramadan, and whatever happened that I really enjoyed and liked, that's something I need to sit down and take time out and do. So again, like some of the recommendations there were memorizing part of surahs, or memorizing a whole surah. That's something you can do as a long-term goal. So you can always have short-term goals and long-term goals. And the short-term goals could be like reciting Quran every day, reciting Salatul Layl every day. They're just 2 things. But you don't have to push yourself beyond limits, because again, as individuals, we must take things in small bites, and we must. It's easier to take on something a little at a time than take lots of it and then just leave it all together. So if we take from Shahr Ramadan what we, the majority of what we liked. Anyway, now, inshallah, some of the habits we've already inculcated in our families are sitting together and eating. So some of us will already not feel right when we're sitting alone and eating. So if we can keep that up. The other thing is keeping in touch with family and friends, because this is something we did over Shahr Ramadan, is meet people. And so if we really enjoyed going to masjid, then let's make Thursday a regular occurrence. Let's try and attend the masajids on Fridays for Jum'ah. Let's try and go there for the wiladats, the shahadat ceremonies, so that we are a part of that. That feeling never leaves us, that we've disconnected ourselves from what made us
so
feel.
many opportunities.
What made us feel alive. Actually, Shahr Ramadan made us feel really alive. We felt like we were, I don't know about everyone else, but there was this sense of constantly being in the presence of Allah, constantly feeling like whatever you're doing, you have this selfless feeling, I'm doing it for Allah. I just feel like I'm getting closer and closer to Him. Even if it wasn't doing ibadat all the time, even if it was just serving or helping out or spending time with your family or just sitting and contemplating about certain things in your life. All these activities felt, or sleeping for example, all of them felt like you were just getting closer to Allah every minute. And this is the feeling none of us want to let go of.
And increased God consciousness. We can take forward.
It's there. It's just we fine tune it, or we let it go. So it's like the radio station. We just turn the knob a little and then we're off the wavelength, and then we turn it on back and we can pick it up. So we can pick up the wavelengths that we want to and connect with Allah. And the greatest blessings we have are the Aimma, Rasulullah and his family,
of course.
and the Quran. We have these huge treasures which we must never let go of. And Rasulullah told us this time and time again, and his family repeated this, that my family, the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt are the two weightiest of things. There isn't anything weightier than these things. That'll keep you afloat, that'll keep you going, and that'll be the cause of our salvation on the day of Qiyamah. And also beyond, when he says that if you hold on to these, that they will meet me at Pool Sirat, that you'll meet me at Kawthar, sorry. So you'll meet me there on the day of Qiyamah. So really we have all the treasures and we have all the resources. It's us purifying our intention and holding on to these, especially the Quran. I think this month we heard a lot about the Quran and how important it was, and how important it was for us to keep it as a guide and a compass in our life, and not to steer away from it. Rather to let the Quran steer our lives. I remember reading a really nice saying, a friend shared this a long time ago, was a Quran that's falling apart usually belongs to someone who isn't.
SubhanAllah.
Because it's utilized so much, it's become a part of your life. And I know a sister in London, she's really good, she's in charge of the Q Fatima, and she works on this, and she always says that use the Quran as if it's your daily guide, the book you refer to every day, whether it's spiritual du'as, anything you want to remember, just tick it off in your book. That's your main reference book. Put post-its, write on it, reminders, everything that, when I'm in difficulty, I want to open the Quran, read this. When I'm having a difficult situation, this is what I want to read. When I'm, when I want to remember Allah, this is what I want to do. When I want to remember the Prophets, this is, when I want to find this, it should be something that we're so familiar with, that no one else should precede us. And that's what Imam Ali alayhi salam says.
I was just going to say.
And his will, that by Allah, I tell you to hold on to the Quran, that no one should precede it other than yourselves. The Muslims have this treasure trove in their hands. And this is the way forward for us, is that when we hold on to these supplications and we make them a part of our lives, I mean, how much did we enjoy the sound of just listening even to the supplications? So even if we feel we're short on time, let's at least listen. If not read, or take out the time to read, let's at least listen to these things. Even if we're going to bed and we don't have time during the day, let's listen and encourage our children. Because I noticed this amazing thing that happened during Shahr Ramadan, was our children got into the spirit of Ramadan because of the way we were. And our children felt this love and connection with Allah without even our wanting or forcing them. There was no obligation on any of our kids. We just took them to masjid, and we just encouraged them to be part of the happenings. And amazingly, Allah opened their hearts up to receive Allah's love and affection and His understanding. I mean, my little one picked up du'as that I never thought I could teach her. I mean, it's really difficult to teach a child to repeat and learn. You take so much time in doing it, but Shahr Ramadan did it amazingly. She picked up so many different du'as she picked up, and I didn't even realize. And she's picked up this, that, 3 or 4 du'as. And I realized that, and prayers, for example, that was a major thing. All year round you're trying so hard to teach your children prayers, but it took 1 month of coming to the masjid, praying every day in Jamaats, in Salatul Jama'ah, and that's all it took. And there was no obligation on the kids, there was no force, there was just, let's go to masjid.
That's amazing.
And it opened up these pathways and doors that all year round we think, life is so difficult, we can't push our kids in the direction of Allah, we can't do this, we can't make them recite Quran. But Shahr Ramadan showed us, a way
What's
of teaching our
possible.
children as well. So upbringing was something that Allah brought to the fore as well for us.
That's really
That
an
the
amazing
calmness
story.
and kindness and encouragement was directly from Allah, and that's how we need to be with the people
Yeah.
around us, whether it's kids or grown-ups.
Yeah.
And we were nicer to each other.
This is actually one of the things I wanted to focus on in this show, is about our character, because the whole point of us fasting, Allah has said, and we know this, we've emphasized so many times, it's
Yeah.
not just to abstain from food and drink. Allah doesn't
Definitely.
want us to just spend our days
No.
hungry. It's what He wants to perfect our character. He wants us to
Yeah.
become God conscious. He wants us to relate to people in a much better way, and be nicer to people, and to perfect ourselves. And that is the outcome. This should be the outcome of Shahr Ramadan. We should have progressed. We should have become, inshallah, better people, even if we've worked on one or two things within our character. And as you were saying as well about, we have so many gems, we have so many beautiful contributions from the Aimma alayhi salam. We have du'as that we can refer to, and there's a particular du'a from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, which I wanted to talk a little bit more about, because it's focusing on character and how a Muslim should strive to be.
Yeah.
And I found that this is really very beautiful. It's du'a muqaram al-akhlaq, and it's striving for the perfection of character. And this is the journey. This is why we're here, to reach perfection. And we've talked about this many times on the show before, about our goal as human beings. This is why we want to reflect
Definitely.
the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. So if we can talk a little bit about this du'a, inshallah, and what we can take from it.
Yeah, just on a separate note, when we talk about the Aimma, again, they reflect back to Rasulullah, and we know that the Quran speaks of Rasulullah as Uswatun Hasana, the best of examples, the one who has come to perfect the morals, the mercy to all those creatures who are the intelligent beings. So Allah has already explained for us, amongst all the other tasks that Rasulullah had, one of the greatest tasks that he had was that of the perfection of morals and ethics for the community that he came in. And when we see his character in the community that he came in, his kindness, his tenderness, his love, his affection, his tolerance, the incidents in the Quran, they're amazing. Allah says in the Quran to Rasulullah that had you been hard-hearted or had you been harsh, then these people would have turned away from you. And this is a reflection of how kind-hearted Rasulullah was, how he spoke to them in such terms that they never turned away from him, even despite the fact that they were so rude, harsh, abused him physically, verbally, they tortured him. Despite this, you see Rasulullah still being the kindest human being, showing the best of akhlaq to them. In the incident of when the people come to his house, individuals call him by his name, shout to him outside his house. Allah intervenes and says, do not call Muhammad by his name, call him with respect, show him a sense of understanding, this is the Prophet of Allah, this is the Messenger of Allah. Do not enter his house without knocking, do not come and
raise your voice in his presence.
And do not come to him and just sit there, and even if it causes him difficulty, he doesn't mention to you. This is the beautiful character of Rasulullah that we forget to mention, that Rasulullah was so perfect in his morals, and he was always striving for more, always trying to better himself. He sees those youths and he says to them, all of you are competing here to see who's the strongest amongst you, who's the fastest. He says, I'll tell you who's the strongest. The strongest is the one who controls his temper. Even in the physical traits, he says, yes, there is strength in physical traits, but then the greatest characteristics comes from the within of from the inside of a person, the way the person beautifies oneself. And like you said, we beautify ourselves with the names of Allah. And the Aimma say to us that they are the Asma'ul Husna, that they are the names of Allah, they are the manifestations of the names of Allah, and that we should call Allah. Allah says, call me upon my names, right? And the Ahlul Bayt say that they are the Asma'ul Husna. And so this is an indication, again, Rasulullah has indicated towards us that the love of my ummah is the ajr, that my Ahlul Bayt is the ajr for me. So if you want to give anything back to me, if you want to thank me, if you want to be grateful to whatever I have brought to you, any reward you want to give to me, this is the way you give ajr to me, is that you love and you follow my Ahlul Bayt. And so when we turn to them, then they become the stars through which we find our guidance. Because Rasulullah is the moon and he's pointed us in the direction of these shining stars. And these individuals then show us through their characteristics, through their supplications, what we should strive for. And like you mentioned, Imam Sajjad was in a time when, after Karbala, when people's characteristics had become depraved. They completely, it was in a total decline, where people had reached the pinnacle of ignorance totally when it came to their characteristics and their interactions with each other. We know that they had accepted someone like Yazid without even paying attention to his characteristics, what kind of an individual he was, and they selected him and they elected him and they agreed to him being their leader. So the society around Imam Sajjad at that time was of people who had moved far away from the characteristics of Rasulullah and his family. And so this was one of the greatest attempts of Imam Sajjad, was to reform the society by way of supplication, was to remind the people and awaken their consciousness by reminding them of the highest characteristics that we should aim for.
Right, okay.
And the dua is so beautiful in the way he balances everything and the way he supplicates. Everything you want to ask for yourself in your reformation is in this dua.
Well, the dua has many different parts to it, and we can see clearly there's a relationship between the creator and the creation as well, between the master and the servant. And then there's a relationship between the self and how one should strive to be, as we've said, in the characteristics that we aspire to have and we seek from Allah. And then there's a duty to our nearest and dearest, our family. And then it permeates into wider society and how we should be within the community as well. So these are some of the aspects that are discussed in this talk.
Definitely. And we start with the first thing where you said our relationship with Allah and our relationship with ourselves and who we really are. And it reflects back on the hadith of Rasulullah and Imam Ali alayhi salam, which say that the one who knows himself knows his Lord. And so if we want to get closer to Allah, we strive to know ourselves. And how do we know ourselves? When you look at the starting of the dua, then Imam Zain al-Abidin starts with looking at oneself and how we can start off by, for example, the first lines he talks about his purification of intention, and making it, the best of intentions, making our yaqeen the best of yaqeen. And you see how he supplicates. Even when he supplicates, he remembers to start his supplication with praising Allah, with sending salutations to Rasulullah and his family. So even when he supplicates, there's a mode of teaching involved as well.
And we've discussed this in the previous du'as we've talked about in the etiquette of the du'a.
We have. And Imam Sajjad, the beauty of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt is they never steer away from the message. It's always the same message, reiterated again and again, again and again. When Imam Sajjad starts with himself and Allah and his relationship with Allah, you see in his Risalat al-Huquq, his Risalat al-Huquq, the treatise on rights, the first right he talks about is the right of Allah. So when he even starts that, he speaks of the right of Allah on oneself, and how that we must know that He is worthy of obedience.
Order of importance.
He's worthy of our obedience and our allegiance. And this is exactly how he starts his du'as as well, where he reminds our soul that our greatest allegiance and the greatest right we have on our souls is that Allah has the greatest right on us. And that where do we start from? We start from this minutest thing when it comes to our deeds is our intentions. He says, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, it's easier to do a deed than to purify its intention. So it's easier for us, for example, when we're saying in Shahr Ramadan we've done all these deeds, but for us to purify that intention, who are we doing it for? Because now is the test, isn't it? When we do it now, Allah made things so easy for us in Shahr Ramadan. When we do it now we think, am I doing it because I'm trying to make someone else happy? Am I doing it because I'm making myself happy? Am I doing it because this is the only way I can become closer to Allah? This is the only way I can find enlightenment, and I can reach out to Rasulullah and his family. So our intention starts to come to the fore. And he starts by saying, oh Allah, purify and make my intentions the best of intentions. So the best of intentions would be the one to reach Allah, the one to gain closeness to Allah, and to have no one else's pleasure at heart except Allah. So Allah, I leave everyone else's service and pleasure except yours, because when I bow down to you. So when I even turn my attention and intention towards you, it's only for you, only for you.
That's extremely important that you've pointed that out, actually, because otherwise all our actions would be in vain. If they weren't for the right intentions, if they weren't solely for the sake of Allah and the pleasure of Allah, then we've not really achieved anything.
It's true, and from intentions then we move. When we make our intentions, Allah says that beautiful thing about the Kiram al-Katibin, that when a servant intends to do a good deed, then Allah instructs the the Kiram al-Katibin to record that deed, as if he has performed that action. However, when he intends to do something evil, then Allah says, give him respite, make a note of it, but give him respite until he actually performs that deed. So through this, even our intentions, we see the mercy of Allah. And that's why when you ask Allah to make the best of intentions, then we say, Allah, we're deficient. Even in that instance when we say to Allah, this is how much I can do. Now Allah, take me through to the final point. Because it's again that neediness and that thing of being the guests of Allah always. Eternally, we are always in need of Allah. And so even at this point, in the first line of his dua, he's making acknowledgement that, Allah, I cannot do this without you. Whatever I can do, I will do. I will do my best, but Allah, I've done my best. I've purified my intention as best as I can now. I've cut off from everything. I have said, Allah, this is exclusively for you. Now you take it to the best. Now you take it to completion. So now I've done what I can. Now Allah, I rely on you totally for you to make this the best. Because I can do as much as I can do, I'll do, but now you take it to completion, make it khair for me. So you make it the best. And then he says even that about yaqeen. He says, oh Allah, make my certainty the most complete yaqeen. So even my yaqeen now, oh Allah, I've acquired this much yaqeen. Now Allah, push me a little further. Give it that give it that boost, so that it can become the perfect kind of yaqeen. What you want of me, Allah, make that happen for me. So we acknowledge even in these few lines, even when he starts off, he acknowledges that relationship he has with Allah. So it doesn't start off with, oh Allah, I've done the best things, now let's just move on to how I am and what I am. It's rather at every point it's an acknowledgement that, Allah, this is what I can do, and now I acknowledge I still need you. I still need you. So wherever I turn, I will still need you. Even if it's to purify my intention, even if it's to make my yaqeen the best of yaqeen, I still need you. So for every single thing, I need you. And this is what Allah says to Musa, doesn't he? That Musa, even for your shoelace, ask me. Even for that shoelace, even for the salt, we said Musa asked for the salt on his table. So even for the most minutest of things, ask me. And we say that the deed starts from its intention. And we see this is the first level of a deed, is that it starts with the intention, then moves on to the deed and the action. The thought process and then the action. So even at the very basic level, Imam Sajjad is teaching us that your purification starts from then. Purification doesn't come when you've done the deed and then you say, Allah, okay, accept, Rabbana taqabbal. Which is we've reached somewhere, but then we need to just take a few steps back and say, we need to start afresh. We need to start at the main point where we need to start where we can make a difference, which is where we start when we make our intentions. Yeah? And then there's quite a few beautiful lines that he mentions.
Yeah, there's quite a few that I personally loved and highlighted. One of them is that when he says, oh God, bless Muhammad and his household and spare me the concerns which distract me.
Yeah,
and this about being distracted from the worship of Allah. And make me worship thee and corrupt not my worship with self-admiration. Now this goes back to that point you were saying about having complete humility in your worship and purifying your intentions in the first place. Why is it? And do we get too pleased with ourselves once we've done 100 rak'ah salat,
which we have done in Shahr Ramadan, and maybe we are feeling a bit pleased with ourselves. I'm sure everyone is feeling pleased with themselves. That we managed to do something. For example, I managed to finish the Quran, so I feel happy I managed to finish the Quran. But has that led me to a position where now I feel, oh, I finished the Quran, that's it now. And what was it for? What did it do for me? Where am I going with it? And when Imam says, oh Allah, keep me away from that which distracts me, then there's again that idea that you are my provider and I rely on you. Again, I do what I can. I earn my rizq as much as I can. Now you, Allah, I do the best I can. I go out and earn my bread. I do it in the most halal way. I give my khums, I give my zakat, I give sadaqah. Allah, now you keep me away from those things that are extra now. Keep me away from all the distractions, whether it's getting wrapped up with my family, in unnecessary spending, unnecessary expenses. Allah, keep me away from pursuing other means when I have enough, for example. So being satisfied and content with what Allah has given me falls into this. Because then you don't get distracted, right? Our distractions come from extras. Our distractions come from luxuries. Because if our basic needs are met, and to be quite honest, when we look at the world around us, and we see how some people don't even have their basic needs met, and if we think about how our basic needs are met, then really, did we need more in Shahr Ramadan? Because this dua is highly recommended to be recited in Shahr Ramadan, is to awaken our spirit, to say, you didn't need more than a plate full of food at iftar. You didn't need so many drinks. You didn't need, for example, this many clothes. You didn't need this much extra money. You could afford to give it away. You could afford to eat less. You could afford to eat healthily. You could afford to eat, cut down on certain things. So the distractions that came in our lives, oh Allah, keep me away from these distractions. I've managed to do that in Shahr Ramadan. Allah, now help me keep that up. Distract me from all those things that have become my distraction. The Quran says this to us, which is that sometimes our wealth and our children, they are a test for us, and that our children also become a distraction for us, and this dunya becomes a distraction for us. So Allah, keep me away from all those things that come in between me and you, that take me away from remembering you, that take me away from turning my attention towards you, that turn me away from being conscious of you, which is very easy to slip into.
Yeah, and that's a really very interesting point you said about the children, because of course children are a blessing from Allah, and we can sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that anything that's a blessing can't possibly distract me from God, but it can.
Yes, it can.
And it can. If it gets in the way of you and your relationship with Allah and your focus with Allah, then that...
With the younger children, it becomes when, for example, how we schedule our timings and prayer timings, and how we work around these things, and how we encourage our children to fit into our schedules with Allah, rather than rotate our the time we have with Allah with them. So that timeshare that we do, we need to figure that out. As our children get older, then there's that whole aspect of the children going against Allah and challenging us, or being put in difficult situations, or having that huge responsibility of introducing Allah to our children. So that becomes a blessing, but we sometimes neglect that, so that we don't have to approach difficult questions or challenging moments with our children. And that becomes a distraction again, because you focus on the world, the secular education, everything else, and so you've distracted your children from the remembrance of Allah. So it's not only the other way, but parents can do that to their children. So we can do that to each other at all times. It's not something that can't happen. Even a thought can be a distraction. So it's not on a major level in terms of people always. Even seeing something could be a distraction. So that's why we have the highest recommendation of, for example, we said lowering your gaze. Because I have the faculty of shahwa. I have that ability to be able to tune into the opposite gender. And when I lower my gaze, I keep myself safe from that.
It's a
distraction, temptation. So again...
sorry, I was going to just say about Imam Ali al-Islam, when he gave the analogy of your nafs, like a person on a horse, and if you just take your eye off for a moment,
wild horse, he said, wild horse. If you even ride a horse, it's difficult enough, but a wild horse. I remember when we went once for horse riding, I was like, oh my God, this is difficult, because the horses were constantly distracted. If you went by a very a hedge with grass, like lots of hedges, they'd constantly be distracted to eat. So you're trying to ride, but it was very difficult to keep steering the horse away. And imagine doing that to a wild horse. Forget normal, tamed horses, but a wild horse who just, who leads you away in every which direction. It's so difficult to keep hold of the reins and to keep on the horse at the same time, and to aim for the right direction. So all these things is how our soul really is.
We need to keep our eye
on
the ball at all times.
At all times. This is what taqwa is about, is being conscious of ourselves. Again, the idea of the one who knows himself knows his Lord, because when you're conscious of yourself, you're conscious of your Lord. So even a thought can become a distraction. Anything good can become a distraction. So even when sometimes you do a good deed, that can become a distraction. So you can get carried away with doing a good thing. Initially it was a blessing, like you said about the children, but then it gets to a point where you, for example, a mustahab thing becomes has more priority over an obligation. So for example, I'll give an example. I'll make the greatest efforts in waking up for Salat al-Layl, but by the time it hits Fajr, I'm so tired I go back to sleep. I miss my prayer.
SubhanAllah.
It's just one of the many things that happens to us. It's not something that, it's a test for our spirit. What can we do? Can we balance both of these things? Can we keep our distractions to a minimum? So Allah, keep me away from all these distractions that that keep me away from you, that come in between you and me. So anything that links up to the dunya, even my smallest thought that makes me take away from you, and which is again ties in with things like vain talk, ghibah, lying, slandering, because all these things don't involve Allah. So there is no consciousness of Allah in that moment. There's no awareness of Allah in that moment, or even awareness of yourself. Because if you're aware of your soul, remember a long time ago you gave this beautiful anecdote of Imam Khomeini. May
By the
Allah,
backbiting.
yeah, may Allah keep his soul in Jannah, inshallah. About the backbiting affecting his soul, where he sat amongst a group of people, and when he heard the backbiting, he physically became unwell. This is an example of a person who is very self-conscious, so aware of what's happening to his soul. And then I heard recently of the incident when Rasulullah said to one of his wives when she was backbiting, there's a piece of meat in your mouth, pick the meat out of your teeth. So again, the manifestations of our deeds in physical form. And this is something that we need to be very careful about. These are distractions, right? This is where we turn out. A distraction is anything that takes me away from Allah, anything that takes my attention away from Allah. And really, it doesn't mean that the dunya is a bad place, because Allah says anywhere you turn, you can find the face of Allah. Because in everything on the horizons and within ourselves, He has put His signs. This He promises Himself to us in the Quran.
And the more we purify ourselves, the
we
more
see
we'll
these
be able to
signs,
see.
and we can see these signs. We see them all around us in nature, in people, but it's how we perceive them and how we take them in and how we process them that changes our perspective of what we do.
Now, one of the other traits that Imam Sajjad al-Islam he speaks about is one of humility. And this is something that, of course, we see in all the prophets al-Islam, all the Imams al-Islam. But here, I mean, the way he puts it is just so beautiful. He says, "Raise me not a single degree before the people without lowering me, it's like in myself, and bring about no outward exaltation from me without an inward abasement in myself to the same measure." So even though in the eyes of everybody else your station is raised, but do not let me think too much of myself to begin to believe that I am so great. And
again, that's the beauty of the Ahlul Bayt, which again reflects on Imam Ali's hadith, which is Islam is moderation. It's the middle path. There is no extremes, whether it's too much or too little. It's the middle path. So there's no extremes. When it came to Imam Sajjad, even asking for dua, you don't see him going in extreme. Even when he asks for dua, he says, "Allah, give it to me with balance. Give it to me with fairness and justice." How so? When you give me any kind of praise in the eyes of people, Allah, make sure that within me, this praise doesn't make me create a sin or a feeling of pride and self-admiration to an extent that I become arrogant. So within me, abase myself to an extent that I feel humbled. That when people praise me, I feel, Allah, this is from you. This isn't from anyone else. If it weren't for you, Allah, this would never have happened. This is nothing attributed to myself. And again, Imam Khomeini's incident, I remember when he was writing and someone praised his handwriting, and he says, "This isn't from me. This is from Allah." Even the praise for his handwriting, he wouldn't attribute to himself. He said, this isn't something that I can attribute to myself. The beauty of this is attributed to the most beautiful Lord. So that happens when we create a balance even in our dua. So when we ask for good things, let's ask for a balance in whatever we're asking for. When he even talks about our characteristics, Imam Sajjad even goes on in the dua to talk about, Allah, whatever is good in me, strengthen it. Make it stronger, make it stay within me. But whatever's evil in me or difficult in me, Allah, take it out or rectify it. So if it's something that cannot be rectified, Allah, remove it completely. If it's something that has rectification, Allah, rectify it within me. So there's a balance in everything that he asks. If there's good in me, Allah, keep it and make it stronger. And then not only does he focus on oneself, but he moves on to, like you were saying, the people of your family, the people of the community. So there are instances where he talks about
he says the envy of the people of insolence to turn the envy of the people of insolence with affection, the suspicion of the people of righteousness with trust, the enmity of those close with friendship, the disrespect of womb relatives with devotion. So he's turning the negative into a positive, the attachment of flatterers with love set right. So again, the moderation you were speaking about, the rejection of fellows with generous friendliness. So
and exactly that sort of just ties in with everything. The way he was asking to not only with himself, but he's praying for others. So if there's any difficulty or hurt or harm that he's caused to anyone else, then make that right for me, Allah, and make even all that suspicion and everything, you can change that, because Allah is the one who is muqallib al-qulub, right? The one who turns hearts. So turn their heart towards me. Inshallah.
It's really beautiful. Going back to what we were saying about humility just a moment ago, I was thinking of Ayatollah Bahjat and some of the examples from him. I can't remember them all, but one of them that I remember, he would never say that you've attended my lecture, that I'm lecturing you. He would speak of it as a discussion, that we were on equal par almost. And these are some of the examples of those who purify themselves and try to live by these beautiful examples. Because we often say, I think it's a cop-out, and we all say at some point or another, these people, they're Masumeen, they're prophets. We can never strive to that level. But of course, we see in examples of the Ayatollahs and those who are closest to Allah that this is possible, and it's possible for all of us.
All of us have that ability.
And then he says in one place that bringing together the people of separation. So this is now, we're moving on to not just the family and the relatives, and bringing
everyone
these
together.
relations closer, but of course the community as well, correcting discord, spreading about good behaviour, covering faults, mildness of temper, lowering the wing, beauty of conduct.
All of these things, excuse me, they tie in with, again, the concept of a community, one of unity, and all believers being brothers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the idea that not only should Allah help me set right the relationships that I have in my family, because there are difficulties in every relationship. And sometimes we struggle in making these things right. And so Allah, I ask for your help in this. But again, it's always an active dua. He makes the effort and then asks for dua. So he's made an effort. You always have to make the effort and then do dua. So for example, with Sila Rahim, Rasulullah says, if nothing else, the least you can do for your relative is say salam or give him a sip of water.
Yeah.
So that's the least you can do. And the most is, he says, you should visit your relatives, even if it takes you a year to travel and visit them. So even if they live far away, you should visit them often. So there's the least you can do, and there's the most you can do. And you can always build up from that. And the one who says, there's traditions and recommendations from scholars that people's hearts turn towards you when you treat them well. And the best way of doing this is by reforming your own character. And the only way that the hard-hearted Quraysh and the Meccans of Arabia turned to Rasulullah was through his character and through his behavior. And we see this echoed in the behavior of Imam Ali alayhi salam, for example. When we see the incident in the battle when he's spat on and he walks away and comes back, that's character. That's strength of character. When you see him stand, for example, beside the Prophet, when everyone else runs away, that's character, because knowing the truth, standing by the... it's an inner reflection that you see these beautiful characteristics that they start to make you a beautiful person. Because as you implement these characters, the effect runs like a ripple through all the people. So like, I remember a long time ago, we shared a video with the one good deed that you do to someone. And it just has this ripple effect where if you do something good for someone, you make their day, you make them smile, they've gone away happy, they've done something good for someone else. And you haven't realized, before you know it, that good deed sort of has a chain effect and has just started a chain reaction and gone on to make so many people's days. And this is one of the greatest lessons of Rasulullah and his family, is that whatever happens, treat everyone politely, affectionately, kindly. I mean, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, when the individual from out of town comes and stands there, abuses him, Imam Hassan just looks at him very politely, says, you're a stranger, do you have a place to stay? Do you have a bed to sleep? Do you have, you must be hungry, you must be tired. Why don't you come with me? And he says, but whose house am I going to? And he says, Hassan ibn Ali, myself. And he falls at his feet from nothing else except the manner in which he was treated. And we know this can be done in every different situation. We talked about how in Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, Imam Hussein, till the last minute before his martyrdom, still spoke to the opposition with kindness. He was never abusive, he was never taunting, he constantly reminded them of the truth. This is the beautiful character of Lady Zahra seen in these individuals. This is Rasulullah, and when Lady Aisha says that there was no one closer to Rasulullah in walk, in talk, in character, like Lady Zahra alayha salam. And then you see this beautiful character that is manifested in her children, and it continues on till the last Imam, inshallah. And you see that even in her daughter, the beautiful respect they have for their brothers, and the way they treat the children, and in every aspect of their behavior, whether it's with their relationship with Allah, or their relationship with their family, or their external relationship with others. We know that Umar Asad, for example, was a distant relative of Imam Hussein, very far away, and being a commander in the opposition. And Imam Hussein still calls him to speak to him and convince him to come to the truth. But in the kindest of manners, the kindest of manners. Even before he leaves Medina, and Walid and them invite him in, he says to Hazrat Abbas, stand outside. If you hear raised voices, then come inside. But you know, only if you hear the raised voices. So till the last moments of their life, even Imam Sajjad, when he travels through the courts and he speaks, there's an eloquence in the speech, but there is no abuse. There is no intent to hurt. There is no negativity in terms of only the enemies of Allah. There's this clear, distinct line: love those who love Allah, hate those who hate Allah, and the Ahlul Bayt. And that clear distinction is important again, in knowing who is
the two sides, very separate.
And it's again, Imam Sajjad says this in his dua eventually, and we were discussing this a while ago. Was when we keep reciting dua, Allah, give me a hand over my enemy, give me a tongue to be able to speak for myself, give me self-respect, give me power over him. The enemy here is the one who harms the true you. The true you is the one that's linked to Allah. The true you is the one that's linked to Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt. So the one who is an enemy of Allah and Rasulullah is your enemy. The one who loves Allah and loves Rasulullah is the one you love. And this is one of the concepts of tawalla and tabarra that the Shia madhab follow in the Furu'ud-Din, is that though we affiliate with those who love Allah and His Messenger and His family, and we keep away from and we turn away from them, and we mention these things in our ziyarats all the time, that Allah, I free myself from all these who turn away from you. And this is the enmity that we talk about, and this is the strength that we ask from Allah, that when, like we see around the world, the difficult situations that our Muslim brothers and sisters are facing, there is an enemy there, the enemy of Islam, the enemy of the Muslims, and it is this enemy that we are fighting constantly.
I mean, this is actually referred to within this dua, actually. It says, "Oh God, make the wishing, the doubt, and the envy which Satan throws into my heart a remembrance of Thy mightiness, a reflection upon Thy power, and a devising against Thy enemy." Then he goes on to say, "Make everything he causes to pass over my tongue, the indecent or ugly words, the maligning of good repute, the false witness, the speaking ill of an absent man of faith, or the reviling of one present, and all things similar, a speech in praise of Thee, the pursuit of eulogizing Thee, an excursion in magnifying Thee."
Again, he recognizing shaitan to be an open enemy, so that's one of our greatest enemies again. And the fact that we said that Allah says that there is within human beings enemies as well. But then again, going back to that point of knowing that Allah turns everything for us. Allah is the one who can change things for us and establishes the good and can erase the evil. And so Imam Sajjad constantly asking, if he puts any obstacles in my path, change them to good, Allah. Make things, whatever he puts in my way, make it better for me. Like, change it over for me. So if he reminds me to turn away from your remembrance, Allah, make sure my tongue is constant in your remembrance. So change that to become a remembrance for you. When he tries to take me away from you, Allah, make me think, make me be more conscious of myself, so that I know and I'm aware of my enemy, and I know, hold on, something's not right here. This is the time to turn towards Allah. So it's that consciousness again, the self-consciousness. And this is exactly what Imam Sajjad's aim was at that time, was to awaken the spirit of the people and to say to them, wake up, the real you is lost. You've lost your own consciousness and you've lost your God consciousness in this exercise, especially after Karbala. And the events that led up to Karbala and after Karbala, which sort of gave you the idea of the kind of Muslims that surrounded the Ahlul Bayt at that time. And we need to reevaluate whether we are the same kind of Muslims, and is there anything we need to change and base around the dua that we've done. I mean, there's so much more to talk about when it comes to this dua.
Yeah, it's very deep, very, very beautiful. It's a very beautiful dua that we can, inshallah, acquaint ourselves with and strive to, inculcate these characteristics within our own selves. And I'm just really in awe of it, because it covers everything that a person would want to strive to be. And when you were saying earlier about speaking in terms of kindness and having akhlaq, and it reminded me of the story of even Pharaoh, when Musa alayhi salam went to Pharaoh, and even Allah said to him, make sure that you speak kindly, otherwise,
even if he's as harsh as he is, make sure your conduct is the best.
Exactly.
So we're responsible for our own deeds. Like every individual is responsible for their own deeds, and it's important that each one of us takes charge of this, and owns our own deeds. We own our own deeds. This is our responsibility. What another does, how you react to it, it's your reaction that counts as your deed. What they do stays with them, even if it perpetrates. But what you do is important. That's why we say, for example, even on the level of, for example, injustice, the one who sees oppression and is quiet is the same as the one who oppressed, because that is what positive action is about. Is that when you see something, you witness something, it's your responsibility, and the action you take that reflects on you, that reflects on your responsibility, that reflects on your deeds and actions that you are accountable for. So in many situations you see this responsibility. Yeah, great responsibility.
You know what? I think it'd be lovely for us to all, take some time out and have a look at this ourselves, inshallah, because there is so much more we could have said, but time is never on our side. But before we end, inshallah, I just wanted to let all the viewers know that we do have a Facebook page and a Facebook group that you can join, Living Islam page. So please like the page and join it, and join the group as well, because we'll be posting up different things. We'll be posting up that checklist of deeds that you can perform into the next few months as well. And also I wanted to open up a opportunity for all of you at home to be featured in our show, inshallah. So if you've got any original work, maybe a poem that you've written or artwork, anything to do with Islam, the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, anything like this, you'd like to send in, then you could just make a video. Make sure it's no longer than 10 minutes or so, and then we'll feature it on the show. We're looking for different types of things, aren't we, Ayman?
Yeah.
So what kind of things would we be
Well, like you mentioned, we can have poems. Poems would be good to be read out or to be sent to us, and we can put them up. And we'll put them on our Facebook page, accredited to the person who has written them. They could be pieces of art, whether it's paintings, drawings, sketches, recitation of poetry. It could be a short clip on a view you have on a particular topic you're interested in.
You could do a book review if you want to do a book review.
Or something that you've read and you've come across, or share a hadith with us.
Or your favourite Quranic ayah and how that's affected you. Or just reflections on how you spent this Shahr Ramadan and what you've learnt from it, what you want to take forward, what advice you can offer to the rest of the viewers and us as well.
We just want to enrich the show, and inshallah, anything's welcome. Obviously, we'll pass it through.
Definitely. But consider this your show. So we'd like you to be a part of it, whether it's through your feedback, your suggestions, your questions, anything like this. And we'd love to put your clips and feature you on the show as well, inshallah. That's all we have time for. Jazakallah khair to Sister Ayman Hiraji. And I forgot to mention the all-important email address that you need to send all of this to. It's livingislam@hidayat.tv. That's livingislam@hidayat.tv. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.